One. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Making Money with InkJet. I'm Deborah Korn from Print Media Center, and you can see our little panelist guests in the window. We've got Pat McGrew from HP and Mark Johnson from HP. Hello, everybody. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I know time is precious. It's back to school week. There's a lot of people fighting for your attention, so we're not going to waste time. We're going to get right to it. Should I flip, Pat, or you want to flip right now?
So we get to the important stuff.
Okay. Yes, about Print Media Center. This is not the important stuff. In case you don't know, Print Media Center provides information and resources to the print marketing community. We have a lot of stuff going on. Just visit printmediacenter.com and you can get all the information, especially about Graph Expo. If you happen to be going, please stop by the Printerverse, booth 3867. HP is one of our fantastic alliance partners for the third year, actually. So thanks so much for the support, everybody. And if you're interested in talking about anything about your business, social media, just get in touch with me. You could find me. And here's some ways you can find me. And also, if you are tweeting about this webinar today, please use the hashtag InkJet, although we prefer capital I, capital J. But if you're using InkJet, we're happy. So I'm actually, like I said, don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm going to turn it right over to Pat and Mark. If you guys have questions, please ask them, and I will try to work them in during the presentation as they come up, or we could ask them at the end. I'm going to put myself on mute so I don't accidentally get all excited, but if I do have a question, I will ask, assuming that other people might have it too. Bye, have fun.
That sounds good. All right, so
excited. That never happens.
That never does happen, does it? So, Mark, we're here today to talk all about making money the old-fashioned way. Thank you, John Hausman, with InkJet. And I think the best place to start is with a little about you.
Who are we? Why are we here? My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the Marketing and Business Development Manager with HP in the Americas. I cover kind of a weird job. I have two jobs in one. I both do our marketing outreach efforts, which includes evangelism and industry events. So I've spoken with a lot of folks out there, at various book events and various direct mail events, but also working directly with our customers in a business development role, so helping them sell. So a lot of my job is both creating the message and helping customers deliver that value proposition to their clients. So I spend a lot of time with print sales teams. So you're going to hear a lot of that in today's webinar, where we're going to talk about some of the value propositions, but that's kind of where I come from. I've been doing this for 20 plus years across lots of different functions. I've worked in everything from post-sales, support, training operators on how to use typesetting equipment, all the way up through using color scanners, transitioning from offset printing to digital printing. So a lot of change points, a lot of forks in the road that we've all experienced as an industry. I've lived there right with you. I've been through them.
Alrighty, so a little bit about me. My name's Pat McGrew. I am a partner to Mark in the InkJet business at HP. My brief is a little bit different than Mark's in that I work worldwide. So while Mark covers North America, I tend to reach out into Europe and Asia and often into South America. And some of it is the same brief. It's helping customers develop that best story to help their sales teams learn how to invoke the power of InkJet for the clients that they're selling to. Many of our global customers are offset companies that are coming into InkJet because of the value proposition it brings to them. Although, of course, many of them are also customers of our other great HP technology, the Indigo liquid toner technology. And so in that case, very often what we're helping them do is grow the volumes of their business. Now, the really cool thing is that when we start looking at Europe and we look at Asia, we find just amazing stories. So my job is to bring them back to Mark so he can share them with the North American audience. And I'm a little older than Mark, a lot older than Mark. So I'm bringing 30 years into the adventure with a lot of customer communication experience, transaction, direct mail, commercial printing, publishing. I write a lot. I talk a lot on webinars. And I'm amazingly findable across LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Put my name into a search engine of your choice and you'll find me. I have a bunch of letters after my name because I do have a few certifications in the industry. I am a Master Electronic Document Professional, which is an Explorer certification, a Certified Marketing Professional through DMA, and a Mail Design Professional through the USPS, just because you can never take too many tests. So I think the story here is that both Mark and I are bringing you, half a century of information. It sounds like an amazing amount when you say it that way. So half a century of information and quite honestly, half a century of passion for customer communication solutions and helping people do better with their own businesses. So that's us. So Mark, jump in.
Okay, so you're attending a webinar called Making Money with InkJet, and there's no way in 1 hour that we are going to tell you how to build your company's ROI specifically to plan how to put an inkjet press in and make money on day one. There's a lot of work and a lot of people that get involved in that discussion. Our mission here is to give you a bird's eye view, a high-level overview of the things you got to think about and some of the terminology and the areas of interest when it comes to inkjet and how it can be a very profitable venture. I purposely didn't load this presentation with tons of HP propaganda and stories of all of our customers who are adding second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th, 14th presses. You can get that from your HP sales guy when you're having a dialogue with them. What I want to do here is kind of take 30,000 feet up and look at the value chain of print. So when I'm talking to commercial printers who do direct mail work, what are the things that are bundled into what we know as the total cost of print? And traditionally, this is kind of how everything falls into, your buckets may be named slightly differently. You might put, overhead not with your plant. You might have heat and rent differently. It's all going to be a little bit different based on how your accountant sets things up. But this is generally accepted how things fall. And what I find interesting when we look at value chains and diagrams like this isn't what it really is. These are what the buckets are, but it really looks more like this. If I hit the right button. This is a little more accurate. This is where you're going to see, when we're looking at the cost of print, what are the biggest drivers? What are the biggest factors in the cost of a piece of mail or in the cost of a piece of collateral? Obviously, it's the materials. The paper is one of the biggest costs. Ink. You've also got postage, probably as much, if not a little more sometimes, than the cost of the materials. Plant and overhead is big, labor is big, but things like waste.
Mark,
yep.
We're postage, but for commercial printers who aren't putting things in the mail stream, it's not just, it's the cost of delivery. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why distribution is another bubble in here too, and whether you put that in with postage or not. Again, it depends on if you're using a letter shop to do some of your mailing work or your commingling work. So this is a little more accurate way to look at it, because these are the big bubbles of things that are the cost of your pieces of mail, the cost of your pieces of print. And quite frankly, when we're looking at these, there's a couple that I can address and there's a couple that I can't. Any technology can address some things. So when we look at the cost that we can address with the technology of printing available today, you're looking at materials, waste, postage, distribution, storage, and labor. Those are the things that an investment in technology can really focus on, that they can address. And what's nice is they're also some of the biggest bubbles in this whole chart. This is an example of one customer. We've taken the name out. We aren't going to identify who it is, but it's pretty representative of a mid-sized commercial printer who's also doing some direct mail work. In this case, the application is a shell and imprint application. Anybody out there doing some of that? It's probably one of the most popular things that we see out there. And it's been working for 20, 30 plus years, but it's also 20, 30 plus year old technology. And it's a real simple workflow. If you follow this from left to right, whether it's the design, the pre-press, doing the offset part of the print, then trucking everything into inventory and waiting. And I've been, just in the last 2 weeks, I've been 4 printers, and we just look at the warehouse space and start calculating square footage. How much of their work in progress is sitting in a warehouse, consuming capital, consuming space, which is dollars, then pulling it off the shelves, making sure you get the right shell with the right data file, doing the imprinting, then inserting, mingling, and mailing. So In that kind of a workflow, there's lots of handoffs. There's lots of places where paper is coming into a machine and out of a machine and onto a pallet and up on a shelf and off the shelf. And every one of those handoffs is an opportunity for error. And that's also known as waste or spoilage. And there's a lot of that in this type of a workflow. Any workflow where you have multiple machines, multiple hands touching a piece of work, it's going to have the opportunity for error. One of the big things that is addressed in our kind of a workflow is compressing this down a little bit. So getting rid of these multiple handoffs, these multiple steps, and making something much more efficient. So let me give you what it can look like. You know, from art files to pre-press to printing to inserting to mailing, making that a single step process. It's also a late binding process, so it's done at the very last possible minute. So not only are we shrinking the amount of hands that touch the job, the amount of machines that the job has to go in and out of, but also we're reducing the amount of time, which to your customers, to the mailers that are out there, time is money, and that's a big deal. To be able to get something in the mailbox of a customer in 2 to 7 days versus 3 to 6 weeks. Deborah, wave your hand if that's something that your customer, yeah, exactly. This is when I talk to banks and marketers, the ability to time stuff much more meticulously is a good thing. Now, something you don't see in this workflow that you only really see when you're actually doing it is when you're in a shell imprint workflow, what are you doing? You're getting all of the same job ready to rock and roll, then imprinting it and off you go. But the shells are all the same, right? In a white paper in workflow, what you can do is completely change the way you batch your jobs. No longer do you have to do all 100,000 of Bank A's work or all 100,000 of Retailer B's work. You can intermingle stuff. And there's a neat concept called, electronic commingling, where you could actually take different jobs from different customers as long as they're on the same paper and mix and match them in postal sort order and do that commingling step that's sort of at the end of this workflow, doing that electronically on the press. So when you're actually putting out postal trays at the end of your process, you're ready to go. Time is money, less hands touching stuff, less steps involved. It's all about saving. So in this particular workflow that we're looking at, this is for a customer that was spending about $1.8 million over the course of a year getting their 12 plus million pieces done. The proposal was to shrink that dramatically down to 850,000 by simply getting rid of some of the extraneous labor, but also a lot of the steps involved in the process. So you look at some of the savings that are involved with spoilage, with labor, lots of different machines require lots of different operators. Being able to streamline that is important. So in this type of a workflow, big savings. What it netted the customer was approximately, yeah, jump in, Pat.
One thing you didn't have in there is the cost of all that warehousing, right? So we know, you and I know of a customer who actually was able to move to this streamlined workflow and eliminate 2 physical buildings from their CapEx in order to, and in fact, by being able to sell those buildings off, they funded a whole lot of innovation in their shop. And
yeah.
it reduced their taxes, it reduced their footprint, and still gave them amazing capacity. So you're not even seeing that in the number in the proposal, but there are all these unintended consequences of moving to this workflow that have dollars and cents savings potentially associated with them as well.
Absolutely, and it all flows down to what's the monthly cash flow. And in this particular instance, they were looking at about $60,000-ish, where they would have a net positive after the investment for the new equipment was accounted for. Now, there's a whole lot of different ways to skin this cat. One of the things that we found with some customers that don't do the actual shell printing is a lot of times the client is providing it, or it's being done by a very, very large printer and trucked in. A lot of times, by getting that additional revenue capture, so instead of sending out for the shells, now the printer who's doing the imprinting, the digital part of the job, now he's doing the full job, which also is a revenue increase. So this is a real easy way to take dollars that you're getting from an outside source, bring them onto your books and show growth. So that's another unintended consequence, is you're actually growing revenues without doing a whole lot of extra effort, because the digital printing and the offset printing all being done in one step takes the same amount of time or less. So that was kind of a nice thing that some printers have found is a nice way to grow top line revenue as well. And as printers know, being able to keep control of the customer, control sounds a little oppressive, but being able to keep a single touch point for the customer is a benefit, both to them and to the printer. But wait, there's more. How much would you pay now? So that was looking at a commercial printer. Materials cost, a lot of times I get a question from people, hey, wait, doesn't digital cost more? You betcha, it does. But the net effect of reducing the amount of labor, the amount of warehousing, all of the ancillary costs around the job. Yes, the actual amount of cost to put those many dots of ink on that kind of a paper may be slightly higher, but it's offset by all of the other savings. And that's why these ROIs can be very complicated. So you can't just look at, here's my cost to produce today, that sheet of paper in cost per thousand. Here's my cost to produce tomorrow, cost per thousand. You really can't compare those. You've got to look more holistically at the whole operation. So you've got to look at the labor savings, the finishing advantages, the pre-press savings. All of that's got to be built in. And I'll give you a glimpse of what some of those spreadsheets look like, but it's not something for the faint of heart to do. And there's definitely some help out there from a lot of different sources, and we'll give you some ideas about that. Other areas for improvement. Pat brought it up already. Postage, big time improvement in postage. If you're not able to segment things down to get the maximum postal discounts, this can help you do some commingling. This can help you do a lot more work to make things a lot less expensive to get through the mail. I've got customers that have moved some of their work from first class to standard because they've shrunk their windows so much in getting production done. They've actually been able to increase the amount of time to get something in the mail, let it be in the standard class versus first class. There's also areas for improvement with your customers. So we've talked about cost savings. This whole first third of the webinar was about cost savings. The second area to look at is the opportunity expansion, right? It's now you're doing a different kind of job. So the fact that I can do this digitally and run your imprint and your base stock all at once, that's great. But let's talk about, why are we running 100,000 of the same base stock? Why aren't we taking that first step into versioning and making 10 versions of 10,000 in the base stock? So changing it electronically, because really the press doesn't care if every single page is different. The press doesn't care if 10 pages are different. You can mix and match and really microzone your stuff down all the way to one-to-one. And now talking to some of the marketers, getting down to one-to-one freaks them out. And that's okay. You don't have to go one-to-one today. You can go 10,000 to 1. You can go 50,000 to 1 and do 2 versions or 3 versions or 10 versions. But it's a crawl, walk, run scenario. Pat, you talk a lot about crawl, walk, run in a lot of your talks. Just take the first step to cut your base population. Instead of 100,000, make it 3 of 30, 2 of 50, 4 of 25, whatever the number works. But do some testing, because, direct mail, what's the rule number 1 in direct mail? Test, and then rule number 2, retest. You're always trying to find what works. And that's what this lets you do, is very easily do a lot more testing, a lot more refinement. And this is something that some of the major banks like Capital One, you look at their test matrices, they're looking at 20,000 variables that they're testing in a massive mailing of 1 million. It's crazy science, but the digital technology is what enables you to do some of this A/B stuff a lot more efficiently. Another thing that we've seen printers do is rationalize their equipment. One of the weirdest things about digital is by putting a digital press in and taking some of that really difficult work off of the offset side of the house, what it does is it lets the offset presses do what they do best, which is long runs of the same thing. That stuff isn't going away. We actually don't want that stuff to go away. We want to help printers get more efficient. Use your offset for the jobs that is the best tool for. Move the stuff that's giving you fits and starts on the offset side onto the digital side. Got a bunch of printers that are doing that today, and actually finding out putting digital in increases their offset capacity. Pat, you want to jump in? You're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh no.
No, we lost you.
No sound.
No. Okay, while Pat's figuring that out, let me ask you something I was going to ask before, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you were talking about doing a cost analysis of materials, especially, can you assess paper, offset paper and inkjet paper? Is it apples to apples, or?
Beautiful. That's a beautiful question. It's probably one of the hottest topics when we talk about inkjet printing. So, I go back with inkjet 20 plus years, and back in the day when you said inkjet paper, everybody got wide-eyed because you were talking about potentially not just a percentage increase, but a multiple increase. 2 to 5x the cost. So a lot of people are scared when they hear inkjet. They think, oh, that means that expensive inkjet paper. It's not the case anymore. A couple of things have happened. Inkjet papers have become much, much more cost effective because there's so many more inkjet presses out there. So there is an inkjet level of paper available for a slight premium. But what's also cool is a lot of vendors, not just HP, have presses that are capable of running with just regular old offset grades of paper. So right now I've got customers doing a lot of bank statements and bookwork just using their offset paper that they're using today. You know, good old-fashioned Williamsburg or good old-fashioned Domtar, 60-pound, 40-pound, 80-pound, run it through the press. We've got the ability on the press to give it a little more oomph. It's called bonding agent. It makes our inks work better with just generic offset papers. We're not the only ones who are doing something along those lines. There's also the ability to prime the paper, especially if it's a gloss-coated sheet or a matte-coated sheet. Some of the higher-end offset grades, we can work with those as well now by priming them. So this whole idea of paper being just such a big hassle when it comes to inkjet printing, it's gotten so much better, and it's going to go away soon enough, I think.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks. Because I just want to make sure that, I understood as far as can you, compare them apples to apples, like I said. So thanks. I think Pat's still having a difficulty over there.
She'll have to use sign language.
Okay.
Her hand up. Cue cards.
Okay.
No worries.
Yeah, she's going to write a note. Okay, Mark, she's probably going to ask you a question or something. We could do a puppet show. No? Should Mark continue? Yes? No? Maybe?
Yeah, I love technology. She's going to send
I think Pat's calling in, actually. I see a little phone there.
When I said earlier that the process of doing these ROIs for the printer, it's a holistic process that requires, some people want to call it an X-ray, other people call it some other kind of a medical exam, but it's a process that when you go through it, you come out of it understanding your business a lot better. So the things that a good holistic ROI analysis is going to look at is all of the costs involved in your print operation, all the way from your rent, your heat, your building, your taxes, your labor costs, your estimating costs, your costs of selling, all the way down to the paper, the ink, and every little piece that goes into the job. Not for the faint of heart, but something that if you haven't done it in a while, it's really a good process to go through just for your own sanity, for your own business planning, but also to help you figure out where you've got areas for opportunity in your business to help increase your cash flow. What that kind of a process can do is be able to give you a very simple to look at graph like this. So we talked about, how much you can save with using a reduced workflow by getting things out quicker. Another way to look at the ROI, the ability to make money with inkjet, is the break even, the crossover point. So at what point when I move work over from one process to another does it start to pay off? And doing the full ROI analysis is going to be able to have somebody who is really, done the research with your business and in tune with what you're doing can tell you if you move 25% or 15,000 pages or whatever the magic number is, at this point you should see crossover of being less expensive than your current production costs. So in this particular instance, we're looking at a break even of around 25% of the work that's moved off of their current process into an inkjet process, it becomes a break even. So everything after that is money in the bank. I'm going backwards, I'm sorry. Another perspective. So we talked about printers and break-evens and cost savings, but you can't cut your way to growth, right? Let's be honest. You really can only save money to a certain extent. At some point, you've got to grow revenues. And that's the other part of this equation of making money with inkjet. It's not just about saving money. It is, but it's more than that. So another perspective is making money for your customers. And by that, I mean you've got to take off your hat and put on a different hat and look at things through their eyes. So what do your customers really care about? Now, my other job in marketing involves a lot of metrics, a lot of measurement. I've got a budget to spend. I've got to prove what that budget does. The metric that we use is called return on marketing investment. And it boils down to, for every dollar I spend, I've got to show how many more dollars I brought in. Real simple metric, but it's a very important one, and it's one that your customers, the P&L line managers, the chief marketing officers, and now more importantly, the chief financial officers care very deeply about. And it's also a different kind of conversation. Yeah, jump in.
So, Mark, it's also one that has a really long tail. So it's sort of the worst of all metrics because we can put a direct mail piece into the, in fact, we're in the process of doing this right now. We can put a direct mail piece into the mail stream. We can try to draw a box around when people will respond. We can try and make an intriguing call to action that has a firm commitment time. But the reality is that that direct mail piece may sit around on someone's desk for 6 or 9 months. and then all of a sudden they'll have a need, and there it's going to be sitting. And our metrics will never show that contact point happening 9 months down the road. So when you're looking at all these metrics, the thing to remember is to just be careful in how you interpret them.
And here's the kicker, especially for those of you that are out printing for B2B customers, business to business customers, the direct mail piece is going to take 3 to 6 months to generate the lead, to get the hand raised. What if your customer has a sales cycle like we do, where that sales cycle might be 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months? So my metric is lead generation is one part of it. I'll get that in the first 6 months, but the actual increase in sale or sale close conversion, I may not get that for 18 to 24 months. It drives marketers nuts. So it's important that you understand those kinds of conversations and what's important to them. And this is probably not as important to the purchasing people. Everything we've talked about so far is going to be music to a procurement person's ears. Why? Because all they're hearing about is saving money, so they can hit that 5% savings from last year that they're mandated to get. While that's important to them, it's a race to the bottom that we really want to challenge printers to get out of that doing the same thing for less every year conversation and more into the opportunity conversation of how can we do these jobs better. And in order to do these jobs better, we have to know what's important to the customer and what their metrics are and how they measure it. So it's all about changing the conversation. I've had some very bizarre conversations working with printer sales teams where we'll walk into a customer and actually try to pitch them on mailing less, which for most printers is counterintuitive, but I'm going to want you to spend the same budget, maybe a hair bit more or a hair bit less, but I may want you to mail less, but I may want you to mail smarter. And how do we do that? With better targeting, by redesigning the pieces to be more performing in the sweet spots of their customers. So a lot of the conversation is now done with the marketing, with the analytics people to figure out how to best tailor a piece to get the customer what they really care about. What do they really care about? Their return on marketing investment, upping that number from 7 to 1 to 8 to 1 to 10 to 1. Those are the things that the marketeers are judged on. And since most marketers only have a couple of years in their position to prove that they've got success, you've got to help them, and they're looking for help. Pat, anything to add to that?
I have something to add, a question, unless Pat,
Yeah.
you want to go and then, okay, thank you. Sorry, anytime someone says procurement, my ears perk because I know you're talking to my people.
Peeps, we love procurement. They save their company tons of money.
Okay, but here's the problem with that, okay? There's a lot of people that equate lower costs for lower quality, period, end of story. If you want to save on your money, then you're changing your paper, you're changing your ink, you're not doing fancy varnishes and finishes. That's how you save money. How do you explain to the buyers out there that this lower cost is not based on lower quality, or if it is, which aspects of it are affected?
That's a great question. So when I talk to the procurement folks, and especially the ones in New York where you come from, where they're a little more print savvy than some in the Midwest. No offense to my Midwest folks, but when you get procurement people that actually really come from the print background, we're very clear about the quality. We're not telling you to go down in quality, to go down in cost. We're actually just showing you a different way of production that is faster, and time is money. So that's where the savings really come from. It's not from, actually the inks might be more expensive using digital printing technologies, but the time to get it produced is much quicker. And we're not really telling you to make a compromise in quality. We're actually really asking the procurement people, can you help us broker a conversation with the marketing folks? And maybe there might be a bigger discussion to have about changing the scope and the way the piece is done to be a better performer for the measurement that the marketing folks care about. How do I get a better reach? Because we're all trying to get to the same thing. How do I make this dollar spent perform better? And procurement's really good at making that dollar very focused, but marketing might be able to broaden the scope of the piece of the campaign to change it a little bit to perform better. And that's part of the conversation. And you only have that as a dialogue. It can't be done as, here's my RFQ, here's how you change something, and that's the end of the discussion. This kind of stuff is really much more of a dialogue. And I've seen a lot of printers get freaked out when we talk about a 3 or a 6 month sales cycle to do a program, but that's what some of these can take. Pat, you got to chime in on that.
Yeah, so one of the things about talking to anybody in procurement is it's a very difficult conversation to even have, because very often the procurement people have a very specific set of criteria that they use to actually have a conversation around. And that is, we have this print job and we want it done in this time frame and we want to pay this much for it. So cracking the ice is a really hard conversation to have. A lot of that happens around relationship building. It's very hard to have that value-added conversation with the procurement people if you don't have an existing relationship with them.
Right.
So, Deborah, you said, you're speaking to your people, right? Well, there are print buyers, and some of the print buyers are the procurement people, and some of the print buyers are independent entities that work with procurement teams among a number of clients that they may serve. So for print buyers, it's an education conversation. Here are all of the options that today in 2015 are available to you that you may not have been aware were available to you, and let us walk you through what all those options are. Now, we don't have a lot of venues to have that conversation, which is really hard because we have an amazing story to share and we have an amazing array of conversations that we can have that would help print buyers in general, but we have a hard time getting in front of them. Separately, the procurement conversation has to be what Mark was saying. Somehow you have to get the procurement people comfortable enough to be willing to open the kimono and let you talk to the people that they serve inside their four walls, their marketing teams, their operations teams, their brand owner teams.
I love Deb's face on that. She's like, good luck with that.
And so, no, and it is hard, However, for us at HP, we take a multi-pronged approach. So you have Mark in the region who's having this conversation with as many people as he can have it with. You've got me working for a business unit where I'm trying to have that conversation with as many people as I can have it with across conferences and blogs and any other opportunity. But then we have our secret weapon. We have a group in our brand owners and agencies group, and their job is to help us broker the conversations we want to have. So it's hard. It's not easy. Nobody's saying that there's a magic bullet or a magic slot that you put a coin in and bingo, you can have the conversation. What we're saying is what we're trying to do is get to as many of those content owners as we can get to through any path we can find to wiggle them and try to get everyone's education levels lifted to where when we do finally get a chance to have a conversation with procurement, it's going to ring a bell to them. They're going to know that there's a program behind it, that there's conversations behind it. So none of this stuff's easy. But if you don't do it, if you don't keep slogging against that giant every day, we're never going to change the industry over to understand the value proposition they're missing. And so away we go.
Yeah, and one of the things that's kind of a bizarre one for me to talk about in this kind of a venue, but it's extraordinarily appropriate to talk about here, is what Coca-Cola's been doing. Y'all have seen Coca-Cola with their lovely, your name on the can program. That was done started in Australia 4 years ago, and they kept it contained on a small island and then branched out to Europe and other markets before they came to the mothership and did it in the U.S. When they did it in the U.S. last summer, what was the problem Coke was trying to solve? Consumption. People aren't drinking Coke anymore. They're drinking vitamin water. They're drinking Gatorade. They're drinking other kinds of waters. People have been drinking I'm still loyal to some degree, though. People have been moving to other beverages. And what's happened is they've seen year-over-year decline in volume, especially in the key demographic of the young males, the young kids. And this has been going on for 10 years. Last summer, with the launch of the customized label, with the ability to put all the different names and things on the Coke bottles and cans, last summer was the first time in 11 years Coke did not have that decline continue. It actually turned and went up. So last summer, they saw it was a small number, less than 2% increase in their target market, but that was the first time in 11 years. What changed? The buzz around the campaign. Do you think that the cost of producing names on labels was a little bit higher than producing the generic labels? Absolutely. It cost more, but a 2% gain in share is worth so much more that the cost of the increased cost to make the labels was minuscule. This proves out across lots of different industries. That works so well. You've seen Frito-Lay do things with customized potato chip bags. And this summer, we just announced it a couple of days ago, Budweiser is going to be doing the same kind of technology with their beer cans at music festivals. And you're going to see a technology from HP called Mosaic where they can make things very unique and customized to an event. It's this kind of stuff that changes the market. It moves the needle. It costs a little more, but the rewards are so much greater. And those are the conversations we're talking about with making money with your customers. So those are labels and cans, but I think they're still valid to talk about with people who are doing just generic print, whether it's mail, whether it's publication, whether it's customized magazines, customized newspapers. These are all important discussions to have. And we've got tons of these stories. And this brand group that Pat talked about, the brand owner and agency group, is an incredibly good resource. And we've actually done a lot for the industry, putting it out there. We've worked with Adweek. We had a couple of sessions, a couple of sections that were done with Adweek last year. And if you look at Adweek and search for HP and Adweek, you'll find some really cool stories on their website as well. So that's part of the conversation having with your customer, because return on investment isn't just about the printer saving money. It's their customers making more money, which is increasing growth for the printer. So in that vein, can't see my next button there, I want to show you what we mean by that. So this is a nonprofit. And I got a couple of these examples that I'm going to walk you through just to show you what that means and how that conversation goes. So World War II Museum had a problem. Not to be glib about it, but their target constituency is of an age where they are no longer with us. They are moving on. And the challenge was to keep their families involved with supporting the museum so that the museum lives on and the legacies live on longer. So they had to reach out to the families and get them connected, get them intimately connected so that they felt they had a stake in it. What they did is they used to do generic mailers and just blast them out and see what happens, which is the traditional way nonprofits work. Make it cheap, make it broad, and send lots of it. They wanted to try a different approach. Combination of cost savings and more targeted marketing. So what they did is they took the newsletter, whether you were Asia Pacific Theater, whether you were Navy, whether you were Army, whether you were Air Force, they took that information and instead of giving you a different newsletter or one newsletter for everybody, they made a customized newsletter based on that data. And then there was a customized donation slip that went with it. And they wanted to see if making this communication more personal would increase the response. So understand, this is going to cost more to do than it did before. So they're going to have a slight increase in cost, but did it increase their responses? And there's two things you have to look at with this type of a campaign. You're looking at the hand raises, the response rates, but you're also looking at the gifts. We're also looking at the amount of money people are sending back to the organization. So what they did is they did a test, both of the active donor base and the sustainer donor base. And what they found is in the active group, in testing it, they got a 30% increase in lift and responses, but more importantly, they got a 46% increase in the amount of gifts given. Same thing with the sustainer test. They got a 24% bump in response and a 37% increase in the donations received, the amount of the donations received. Those numbers, for those of you that are in the nonprofit space, those numbers are off the charts. Nobody ever expects to see that kind of a lift. So the cost increase of producing this piece a little bit differently is more than outweighed by the lift in the amount that the campaign generated. Pat, were you going to add to that? I thought I saw you waving your hand.
Yeah, so I love this story because I think that it's one that resonates across a whole variety of industries. Certainly the nonprofit charitable giving component of direct marketing is a huge, huge market for us and for the clients that we serve. So when we're able to share these kinds of numbers, I think it gives them something to hang on to and to share with the teams that they're working with. I think the thing that everybody has to remember is that none of this happens without some baseline work being done. You have to know your numbers to start with if you're really going to be able to prove out the value proposition. And too often we see nonprofits who don't know what their baseline is.
I've always done it that way.
They aren't actually sure. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, we've always done it that way.
And the problem is that when they do that, when they do the same thing over and over and over again, and they don't know their numbers to start with, it's much harder for us to go in and sell and help them understand the value proposition. It's much harder for the PSTs who do this kind of work to help them out. So very often the first start to understanding what the value proposition might be is a pilot that the PSP undertakes on behalf of the nonprofit. And they may do that as a sharing kind of project or pilot to demonstrate the value proposition. And you can get some pretty reasonable ideas around the return with just very basic segmenting, even for the World War II Museum. Very, very basic things like what was the branch of the military and what is the gender are very basic things that people respond to and as well as your content. Remember, the content doesn't write itself. If you're going to do variable projects, someone's got to write the content. And this is, again, another facet of doing this kind of variable communication a lot of people just miss in terms of the budgeting.
Yep. Next one there. This is one, Pat. I'm actually going to throw this to you because this is your baby. You work with these guys in depth. So I'm going to let you tell this story. I'm getting good at this story, but you've been there from the beginning. So walk through how this customer saw an increase in their ROI across multiple measurements.
Oh, my gosh. So welcome to Zeb. Zeb is one of our favorite stories to tell because we've been telling it now for 4 years. And the cool thing is we haven't been telling the same story for 4 years because this thing just keeps changing. 4 years ago, our customer, Semeta, who are based in Belgium, brought us an amazing story that began with something called a direct mail newspaper, and we had never seen anything like it. It was personalized. It was based on a loyalty scheme for a company that profiles very much like the Gap in the U.S. They're a high street jeans retailer. So young sort of turn to them. They like to think of themselves as being edgy. They are they're out on all the high streets. They're in the malls. They're all over Belgium. And Zeb is a cool company in that they have a vision about how they want to portray themselves. So 4 years ago, they were struggling. Their loyalty scheme was not really returning the numbers based on the investment that they had made on it. And they were right on the edge of actually closing the loyalty scheme down. Instead, what they did is partnered with Semeta, their printer, and said, look, what can you do that'll wake up the loyalty scheme members? You know, they're young. We're sending them postcards. They're not responding. We don't know why. And of course, they were sending static postcards out to a bunch of 18-year-olds and 15-year-olds and 20-year-olds who just didn't really care. So the first thing was a direct mail newspaper. And the direct mail newspaper, when it dropped into the mail stream in March of 2012, it actually caused a revolution in the marketing team at Zeb because that direct mail newspaper mailed to every member of the loyalty scheme was personalized. Their name was on the front of it. Their buying patterns were used to identify what to promote to them. It caused people to take the newspapers, which had showed up in their mailbox, into the stores and to point to things in the newspaper and say, I want that top, I want that pair of jeans, I want this deal. The other thing that happened is that people who got the newspaper, young women especially, which was their big target demographic, they would take the newspaper into the store with their girlfriend next to them and go, hey, my girlfriend didn't get her newspaper. Why didn't she get her newspaper? And, you know, the clerk would go, oh, gee, she's not in our loyalty scheme. So, of course, they immediately signed them up. A couple of things happened. Within a couple of days of this dropping in the post, the Zeb stores actually had to bring more help on because they were getting rushes in the stores. And the first weekend after this dropped, they actually saw amazing sales. They, over the course of about 18 months, they doubled the size of the loyalty scheme participation, which was amazing for them because that means they're, of course, capturing more data. They actually did the newspaper version 3 times, but then along the way, the Zeb guys said, wait, what else can we do? And so what you see on the screen is the Zeb magazine, and they've now done 2 different versions of the Zeb magazine. So they're trying to change it up for their loyalty scheme members. So what did happen? What was the value proposition of doing this kind of really massive print and mail kind of operation? Well, 20% higher ticket sales. So in store, same buyer, the buyers were buying 20% more than their buyer history indicated that should have been expected. Return on marketing, they say it's a 45% higher return on marketing investment against their other forms of marketing advertising. 7% reactivation of lapsed customers, which for them is amazing because that means that people now see value in the loyalty scheme. They did a couple of cool things. They have a YouTube channel and they have a Facebook page. So out on their Facebook page, they were inviting people to post pictures with their own newspaper or magazine, and there was a tremendous uptake in that. So in the end, they now have a whole lot more in terms of customer data. They consider their customer data to be the best it has ever been, and people are responding. And you have to remember, this happens in Belgium. Why is that relevant? Because the data protection laws in Belgium are much tighter than they are here. So for the Zeb team and the Semeta team that supports them to be able to come up with a way to use customer data without violating data protection acts and produce an amazing marketing product, it's a win-win-win across the board for Semeta as the printer, Zeb as the customer, and the loyalty scheme participants. It's one of our favorite stories.
And it's one it's an important story because it's the customer, it's your client. It's what's important to them. So these are some of the metrics that they were moved by. And at this point, when you've had this conversation, does the cost of the piece become the most important part of the conversation? No. It's what value does that piece drive? So this is another way to look at it. This is from our friends at Pitney Bowes, who are our partners selling equipment into the transaction space. This is some of the points that Pitney makes with their customers when you're looking at whether it's overall operational efficiency, greater value across the business. And we're talking about statements and billing and transaction-oriented type of stuff. There's some studies that are showing that bills that are easier to understand get paid faster. People call the response centers less frequently, which is money in the bank. They pay quicker. There's a whole ton of stuff that happens when you make things more personal, more relevant, more colorful. And these are just some interesting stats that I wanted to share with you, just to kind of get a handle on another part of the business. Pat, you want to chime in on that?
Right. And so Mark, one of the things people don't really give a lot of thought to because it's not usually in their cost center. So if you work for a large direct mailer or a large transaction producer, very often those are the same thing, right? If you're an insurance company, if you're a bank, if you're anybody who's producing both direct marketing and transaction, there's a call center out there somewhere. So if somebody gets something they don't understand, and that might be a direct mail piece, they call the 800 number and they start having a conversation with someone. Those phone calls into the call center can cost the company between $10 and $35 per phone call. So imagine if you can reduce the call center volume by even 1 or 2%, the amount of free cash that comes back to the bottom line is pretty amazing. So the clearer, the crisper, the more concise, and the more relevant the things that go into the mail stream are, the more the company saves. So we have heard tales of insurance companies changing their marketing concept to make it more relevant, more personal, and we have seen them watch their call center volumes reduce to the point where they had enough free capital to go buy other companies and actually produce some visionary, innovative work within their own four walls. So don't discount that lower call center volume piece. That is a really, really huge piece.
Yeah. One more thing, because we're getting close to the end. One more thing. We talk about mail and transaction and commercial work. I want to throw something in about books as well, because there's a lot of commercial printers that are also doing book work, or they're adding that to their mix. One of the things that we always talk about with books is the whole concept of a hybridization of mixing inkjet or digital printing and traditional offset printing. This is the best way that I can describe it. When you have a book coming out in the beginning, do you really want to run 2 million and hope to God it's going to sell out? you're going to be testing. You're going to be running a small run at the beginning to gauge market acceptance, not flood the bookstores, not flood the shelves. And then once you know what the run is going to be, what the length of the mainstream level of the production is going to be, that you can run an offset and then come back on at the long tail. This is the whole concept of digital warehouses. So when we talk about, what's driving supply chain economics on the book side, it's getting rid of the returns. 35% of books come back to get recycled. That's a sin. It's an environmental sin of the highest order. That shouldn't happen. Returns, overruns, the long tail, how do we deal with keeping stuff in print when it's on demand? Shorter runs, and that's where the digital warehouse concept comes into mind. So a lot of books, whether you know it or not, and I've been to the plant that does this, you order something on our favorite online retailer, won't name it, the book shows in stock and it'll ship tomorrow. But you know what? That book's getting printed tonight after you order it. And that's the model that a lot of the publishers want to get to, is print on demand. Because you know what? Even though it costs a little more to print the book on demand, it's still a whole lot less than having 35% of an overrun returned and shipped and recycled. So I didn't want to lose sight of our books. One of the things that HP learned early on when we launched our inkjet web presses, book publishers and book printers were our first most enthusiastic early adopters, because there was such a supply chain savings to be had by moving to a digital print workflow. They were the early adopters, 7, 8, 9 years ago. They paved the way for a lot of our commercial printers to realize some savings. So what does all of this mean? Making money is really two things. It's reducing your costs for you as the printer, and that's your operation, your labor, your overhead, your waste. It's also reducing your time to produce, but it's also broadening your offering and helping your customers make more money. So it's making more impactful, more value-added pieces that are higher value to them, which means higher priced to you. So it's a double bottom line. It's decreasing your bottom line costs and raising your top line revenues. And it all comes from a conversation. You hear Pat and I say the word conversation and dialogue a lot. That's what it is, because it's more than just, I need 1,000 of these. How much is it going to cost? It's, we're thinking about this campaign and entering into a dialogue where you may go back and forth a little bit and you may actually help them. And that's something that print sales guys, the really smart ones, are good at. And they found a whole consultative approach for helping their customers drive their campaigns to be more successful. That's how you get the Zev Jeans kind of things to happen. That's how you get these complete change the game kinds of campaigns that are impactful and make everybody in the chain a lot more money.
And so the way to so just a quick thing, the way to start having this conversation, the way to start making money is to start looking across your customer set, the people that you have the best relationships with today, right? Because people ask us this all the time. Oh my gosh, I don't know how to start. How do I start the conversation? How do I go find new customers? And my recommendation is always crawl, walk, run. Mark, this is my favorite phrase. And the reason that I say start with your current customers is because somewhere in that current customer set, you have a visionary customer that maybe you just haven't unlocked their creative potential yet. Go look at your current customers. See who wants to do something interesting. See who will take the journey with you and become your reference account. Because I promise you there is someone in your mix who will do it with you. These are relationship sales, right? The way you become known as the go-to company in your area of expertise for these things is by getting a customer to take the journey with you the first time. And if you can do that, then you will watch it snowball. Because when you become the go-to person and you've demonstrated your ability to deliver, everyone will beat a path to your door. This is what we've seen happen with Symeto over the last 4 years. They are doing work for so many companies that actually compete with the company that owns them, and their company doesn't care because their presses are running 24 hours a day.
Making your customer a hero really does a lot to engender that relationship. And as a marketer, we like having people make us look good. I will brag to the nth degree about my agency because they're doing such amazing stuff for us. We like that. The next steps are pretty simple. Measure twice, cut once. Learned that early on when I started doing remodeling work. Pat's in the middle of some remodeling projects. She knows this really well. There's some precision involved in building ROIs and measuring your business. The nice thing is you don't have to get a book for dummies and do it yourself. There's a lot of help out there. Every vendor, and I will say it from HP standpoint, but I know my friends across the industry, everybody's got highly competent CPA level financial folks on board that can help you understand where the biggest bang for the buck is going to be in your business. These are important people. They can help you. The vendors all have that for you. There's also associations. Let's not forget NAPL, PIA, NAQP, Epicom.
Epicom is NAPL now.
I know that I'm going back to NAPL because they kind of pioneered this with a lot of their consulting work, and all of that roll up under the Epicom umbrella. They've got a team of amazing consultants that can come out and really help you figure out your hourly rates, how to price your stuff, how to cost your stuff appropriately, how the MIS systems blend into that. So there's a lot of association knowledge and talent out there that you can reach out to. There's also independent consultants as well. Honesty and openness. I've told every customer that I've ever worked with that goes through this process, don't hide anything. Everybody signs their NDAs and confidentiality agreements, but trust that'll be maintained and honored, but you've got to be open and honest so that we can help you help yourselves. And then let the numbers guide your decision making. That's on the cost saving side. On the revenue generation side, on the different kind of application side of the equation, talk to your customers, and importantly, talk to your sales teams. Who's got the breadth of understanding on the marketing landscape that they can have these kinds of conversations? If you don't have somebody like that, it's time to go out and look for one like that. They're out there. Craft a story, engage with your customers, do pilots, as Pat said. This is where you find your champion, and that early champion becomes the paver for the rest of the golden road. And then prepare your organization. When you shift to a digital printing workflow, it changes the mentality of the shop. Every customer that I've been to, I've worked with them over 10 to 12 years, you're going to see a shift in the culture, in just the kinds of people that are working on the presses, the way the sales reps approach everything. There's a much higher level of energy. They become more of a high performance culture. You get a lot more metrics oriented. I mean, I've got shops where there's a digital monitor at the front of the shop showing you every single press, what the uptime is, what their pages produced are, where the jobs stand in the queue. Everybody's focused on metrics. The sales team as well, they're using CRM systems, whereas before it was, Billy with his notepad. Now they're on Salesforce.com. They're generating drip campaigns, very, very precision oriented. So it's a change in culture. It also, because of these changes, gives them a greater opportunity to take this.
Mark, it's almost 2:00. I definitely want to ask two questions. You think you have one more slide left?
Well, how's that a segue?
Perfect. Pat, are you still with us?
I am with you.
Okay, cool. Okay. This might prove that we don't or we aren't in collusion with each other when it comes to me asking questions. This webinar is about making money with InkJet, right? But there is a cost of buying that machine.
Yes.
What is the span between buying the machine and making money with the machine?
So the early example I gave you is we looked at a customer that just on a cash flow basis, the lease payment for the new press was more than made up for in the first year. And that's not an uncommon thing to happen, is where you're actually seeing the cash flow crossover happen within that first 12-month period. I've got customers that are doing it in 3 months. A lot of it depends on the type of applications they're printing, their financial situation. But you should be able, any good business person is going to tell you, you want to have that payback be positive within 12 to 18 months, 24 at the most, that you're going to start seeing that crossover.
And those people who are making that return so quickly, is that because they had the proper customers in place already that they were able to bring this technology to, or did they get the press and then go looking for people to work with?
Build it and they will come is a very scary business proposition. What the most successful customers have done, and this sounds totally counterintuitive, but it's been proven out more than a handful of times. One in the East Coast, actually, his payback was enhanced because he retired some of his offset presses. Now, here's what happened. He took the jobs that was giving him fits and starts that were causing him so many hours of make ready and waste on the offset press for 500 runs, 750 runs, 1,000 runs, small run stuff that was just knocking them crazy in the offset side of the house. They moved that work to digital. What that did is it freed up so much capacity and time on the offset, they were able to retire one of their 4 presses, consolidate the work in the offset side to the 3 presses, do more longer run work on that, and all of a sudden, just from the increase in efficiency, and there was some labor, definitely not going to hide that fact, there was some labor reductions because they were able to retire a press and an entire crew that ran that press. That's what helped drive the ROI to be positive.
Right. Okay, and my last question, because go ahead.
And Deborah, just one other thing. So we have had a lot of customers who've done this offset to inkjet conversion and transformation of their business. So we have a lot of numbers around that. But that's not the only way to get the payback. What we find is that the customers who do this successfully, there are 3 things that they work on right out of the gate. One thing is that they work on their sales force and they identify as quickly as they can who on their sales force is actually going to embrace the vision and sell the inkjet solution set and engage their customers, and who are not. And if you've got team members who are simply never going to get on board with selling inkjet, they confine them to an offset piece of the business, or frankly, they exit them because they're just not going to work. The other thing that happens is that they become very good at self-promotion. They understand how to look at their current customer set and to sell to their current customer set at the same time that they're building a net new customer set. And they do that as a 2-pronged approach so that they're building new funnels that they've never had before. And the last thing that they do is they learn how to create new products that they've never sold before. And it's true whether it's book publishers, it's direct mail marketers, or it's commercial printers. It comes down to building a whole new set of products that will intrigue the client base that you want to go after. And that's how they get the fastest ROI. Because the customers who buy our press or anybody else's press and just sit back and expect work to show up and expect that just the work that they have right now, they'll just slam it over onto their inkjet device and, that'll just be fine. Those customers are never as successful as the ones who actively go out and try to change their business.
Yep.
Right. Okay, my last question is actually for each of you. And then we can, do our final slide. In 30 seconds or less, what is your elevator pitch in regard to the value proposition of inkjet? Pat.
inkjet, high-speed inkjet web presses allow you to activate a piece of the business that you've never been able to activate before, because it opens up the range of possibilities for the products that you can sell, the speed with which you can deliver them, and the price at which you can deliver them.
That was freaking amazing.
I gotta follow that.
Yeah, good luck.
No, wrong way.
Yeah,
what she said.
What she said. Should I give you another question? I don't even know if we should touch that, but you might have a different point of view. So go ahead.
I'm not improving on that.
Okay, I'll ask you a different one then. I'll ask you a different one. In 30 seconds or less, what is your elevator pitch regarding the cost savings that inkjet can provide for printers?
Inkjet printing offers a lot of cost-saving capabilities, both in the front end of the workflow, the production of the print, as well as the ability to commingle more jobs together. There's a lot of elements of an inefficient print workflow that inkjet can help you overcome, rethink, re-engineer, retool, and in many cases help improve a 30-plus year flawed offset workflow that many shops have fallen into. So the possibilities with inkjet to re-engineer and rethink how work flows through your shop can make all the difference.
Thank you guys so much. Do you want to flip to your last slide?
It's just the contact info, I think, for you, sweetie.
No, for you.
For us.
Well, it's kind of for us. It's kind of for us. It's where are we going to be next? So,
Geograph Expo.
Yeah, and we did a come find us and talk to us. We'll be in the HP booth, we'll be in the Printerverse, we'll be anywhere. And then I'm then going on to Barcelona for our Print It to Believe It event. And then I'm also doing a digital publishing forum in Milan. So if you're a European listener, ping me, and I'll probably find you. I'm in Spain, Belgium, Italy, and Germany during September.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you guys once again so much for hanging out with us during this hour. Everyone who's been watching the webinar, and of course, Pat and Mark. Really excited to work with both of you for special events at Graph Expo. We have a case study cafe with InkJet, high-speed InkJet, which you're both involved in.
Yes.
And then Mark, with your Indigo hat on, we actually have a really cool show and tell lunch. And I believe some members of that brand team are actually presenting in the booth about the Bud Light campaign.
The Bud Light, yes.
Yes, with Mosaic, which I can't even tell you that I'm plotzing over that one. And then on Monday evening, we're having a beers, books, and booze. I don't know. Now I'm saying it wrong, but wine, beers, and books. That's what it is.
All printed digitally.
It's a
We're printing the wine digitally?
Well, maybe the wine boxes.
Okay.
The event is based upon helping printers get into the short-run bookmaking market. And Indigo will be there representing, as well as Fastbind USA, GPA, and a company called Lumapix that helps printers gather up things like photos, which, quite frankly, is every printer should be in the photo book business. So, again, thank you guys so much. Please visit the HP booth at Graph Expo. The InkJet information website is on the slide, and we'll be sharing this webinar and information about everything coming up. Thank you guys so much again.
See you then.
Thanks, Deborah.
Bye.
Thank you.
All righty.